Hi, I'm Jenny. Thanks for stopping by. If you're new here, I talk about random things that pop into my head. And if you've been following me, well, thank you for coming back. Like I always say, you do not have to agree with what I say. And you're welcome to comment on it. Just please remember to keep it civil in the comments. Don't be mean, okay? So, there's been a guy from Maryland who was sent to El Salvador, and there's a big debate over whether or not he was legally or illegally deported. And just maybe about a week ago, I guess it was, the president of El Salvador came to the United States and met with President Trump and all the people in Washington, D.C. Press conference or some sort of media viewing of that conversation. There were reporters there, and they were questioned, both Trump and Bukele. I'm going to say his name wrong. I apologize. I don't mean to be disrespectful. The president of El Salvador were both questioned, and some of the other political people were there as well. And so, and I believe Gabbert was there. So the question is, if was it found that he was illegally deported, would we bring him back? And the consensus of the people in charge is that this person was an El Salvadorian citizen, that he was in the United States illegally, and that he did have, according to two different court hearings or court findings, he did have ties to MS-13, that gang that is considered a foreign terrorist organization. And that there was, I think, one particular piece of documentation that was not completed properly within the process of deporting him. So those are all the things that came out on this. And there seems to be a hard stand in the government, the federal government, I want to say, that regardless, he was here illegally, he does have the ties to that organization, and regardless of whether the process was completed or not, and I believe this has to do with our foreign affairs process versus due process for citizens. But because of that, he was, his standing as an illegal and being related somehow with the MS-13, that his deportation was legal. And they asked the president of El Salvador if he would send them back. And his response was no. He belongs in their prison. He's a gang member, and they have worked very hard to make their country safer, and he's not going to do something to undo all the work that they've done. So that was his stance. Our stance is that he is where he's supposed to be. And then I can't remember, it was a man, he had said that basically there were two other points that I want to make. It was stated that the justice system does not have jurisdiction over foreign policy, and that because this person from Maryland, we say from Maryland, that's where he was living, was an El Salvadorian citizen, he's in his country of origin. So if we went down there and got him, that it would be kidnapping. Okay? And El Salvador is saying they're not going to smuggle criminals back to the United States. So there is a partnership definitely between El Salvador and the United States. And the two presidents seem to be of like mind. Now, since that meeting, Van Hollen, I believe is his name, the senator, he's a senator from Maryland. He has made a claim, and my understanding is that today, as of the time of this recording, so by the time you see it, it may be already in the past, he is going to go to El Salvador. First of all, what I saw is that he said he tried to reach out to the El Salvadorian president while he was here to meet with him to try to get this person back. But now he's going to go to El Salvador and try to speak with the El Salvadorian president to get this guy back to the United States. And this brings a lot of questions to my mind. First of all is, regardless of whatever faux pas was made with the documentation process, the guy he is an El Salvadorian citizen, and he is linked to this gang. So does that make Van Hollen a traitor? And I looked that up just to find out exactly what the definition of a traitor is, and not completely, but one of the little tick marks under the definition of a traitor is somebody who comforts or aids an opposing entity, which would make these terrorists an opposing entity. Now, we're not at war per se, not an official war like we were with terrorism under the Gulf, under one of the Bush administrations after 9/11. We're not at war, as far as I'm aware. It hasn't been declared a war against these gangs, but there are steps being made to get them out of our country, and we're partnering at least with El Salvador. I'm not 100% sure with other countries yet, but we're definitely partnering with at least one other country to get these people who are in these gangs to put an end to this kind of activity. So that's what makes me wonder if it's treason. And then I think, well, there's some question. I've seen both. I don't know for sure. Who's paying for this? So is the United States paying for this? Is the state of Maryland paying for this? Is Van Hollen paying for it on his own? That's a question. Because I can promise you that there are a lot of people, both within the United States as a whole and Maryland in and of itself, do not want this guy back and do not want to be paying for this person, the senator, to be making a trip to El Salvador to bring somebody back to the United States. And then there's the other question of, even if they do bring him back, because this has been stated, regardless of how he gets here, whether it's Van Hollen or El Salvador sending him back to us, once he gets to the border, they're going to find out who he is, and they're going to deport him again anyway. So this seems like a fruitless trip in and of itself, just based on the status of the guy. I'm not really understanding this. I know that there's a lot of people who are really demonstrating right now to get the guy back, but I don't understand it. Supposedly, he was doing human trafficking. Not sure if it's within the United States, people who were born and raised here, or if he's facilitating bringing people in from other countries, and to what extent is that trafficking? In other words, is he just moving illegals in, or is he bringing people in to be exploited in one way or another? Okay, that part I'm not 100% sure on. I have heard that it was stated that he was participating in that. And so I just, I'm not getting it. I'm really not getting it. So if you can explain it to me in a way that makes logical sense, I would appreciate that. And then I'm wondering what is going to happen to this Holland guy. He's been very open. He went on the news. He said it I've seen him in different settings saying that he's going to El Salvador. And to me, that it does seem treacherous, treasonous, that he would say something openly like that. I'm sure he stands by his convictions, but has he thought it through? The repercussions of his actions? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I mean, I would have to think long and hard about something like that, because first of all, I don't know that I would go to another country and demand something like that. Like, you have to negotiate. You have to be able to bring something to the table, and you're going to have to be reasonable. Not only reasonable, but also aware of the culture of the country that you're dealing with at the time, in order to come to some sort of an agreement. And there have been times in our past where we've had American citizens in other countries who committed crimes, and we've tried to negotiate with countries. Singapore comes to mind. There were a couple people in Singapore who had to face the penalties for their crimes based on, the Singapore law, and both of them were young men, I'll say, who did acts of vandalism, and Singapore caned these people. Okay, and over here we're appalled, but Singapore can run their country however they please. That is the law in their country if you commit acts of vandalism. And it's the same thing. This guy's an El Salvadorian citizen. He is a gang member, and El Salvador has decided to crack down on gang members. So somebody from our country going there to try to get him to come back, I think that's probably not a good idea. I just don't. I don't know how El Salvador is going to see it, other than, we're not giving up one of our citizens. And what's to stop him from coming back here if you deport him when you get to the border and wreaking havoc in our country? I can't see it I really can't see it playing out. I really can't. So like I said, I'd like to know your thoughts. Just please remember to keep it civil.